Revolution Part 2. Why is France burning down right now? Is it because French workers are being asked to work an additional 2 years? Or is it because of a neoliberal conspiracy to drive people into the ground, surveil them into the shadows, and to punish them simply for being alive? Hello there, you 6.3 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage to truth and freedom, where along the way we will learn together, taking on a diverse range of opinions and views on a variety of topics and subjects, like today's story. France is burning down ostensibly because undemocratically a bill has been passed to add 2 years onto the working life of the average French person. And there's no such thing as an average French person. Have you ever met one? They're all extraordinary. Why has this had such an incredible impact? Why is this thing, albeit wrong, had a disproportionately large effect? How does it relate to the Gilets jaunes protest, yellow vest protest of a year or so ago? And does this mean that across the world we're starting to see a rise of populism that will accept nothing less than systemic political change, new decentralized systems, meaningful democratic representation, and an end to unfair taxation? Revolution is in the air, everybody.
King Charles has postponed his upcoming state visit to France.
Oh no! What do they care? They don't care if an English king comes. Normally when they have an aristocrat in Paris, you know what they do to them, don't you? Nighty night into the basket.
As chaos continues over the nation's planned pension reform.
Time after time, police sending off baton charges to try and force back the protesters.
We're very quick to criticise the mainstream media on this channel because usually they deserve it. Let us know in the chat and the comments if you agree with us. But that guy, well done. Time after time. Oh, sorry about that.
Time after time.
Carl might as well join in. Fuck off, you bloody French pigs, cerdos. I don't know what's French for pig. That's Spanish, certainly.
French people angry after President Emmanuel Macron forced through a pension reform bill without a vote.
Forced through a pension reform bill without a vote. It's meant to be democracy, isn't it? Should we get a vote on this thing where we make people work another 2 years? No. What's the point? What if they were to say no? Then I wouldn't be able to do what I want. Good point. Just put it through.
Thursday afternoon, France's Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne, an ally of Macron, triggering a constitutional tool that allowed the bill through with no floor vote. The uproar, immediate. Opposition members shutting down Parliament, belting the French national anthem.
French politics is more sexy, isn't it? It's a bit madder in there. That one says, oh, they put it to the honourable gentleman. Oh, that means something in our one. Over there, someone might take their top off or do a shit.
Frustration fueling strikes. Airline to railway service disrupted. Garbage piling up.
Of course, it's not just on the street protests, but organised worker strikes. And I would suggest to you that if you're ever going to get some meaningful change from outside parliamentary or congressional democracy, it's going to require coordinated action. That is why all political parties are ultimately opposed to union movements, because those movements mean that you have a way of organising against power, whether that's based on your geographical community or your job or some other issue. When a public coalesces around something and acts as one, we literally have the power that democracy is supposed to afford us.
Why is 62 to 64 a big deal? To be able to work and as well to have our proper life and good health.
She's talking about a quintessential French value of work-life balance.
Literal joie de vivre, the joy of life. You might have forgotten this. You're meant to enjoy your life. It's not meant to be endured. It's not meant to be, I'm alive. Oh God, isn't this terrible? All the corruption and the lies and the heartbreak and the despair and the pointless senselessness and the charade of it, and just looking at things on the screen that don't mean anything and eating food that's not quite right, in the sense that there's something just out of your reach, some connection, some beauty, some joy that's not for you, that you're being deprived of. It's meant to be enjoyable. And let me tell you this, it's possible. And it's so exciting, for me at least, to see many people come together as they did in the yellow vest protests of a year or so ago in such quick succession. Let's face it, this is a time of crisis, one crisis often leading to another, whether it's military or medical or financial. We're seeing the necessity for radical change, and we're seeing the opportunity that mass action can create. What we do not yet have is a cohesive response to the existing corruption, a vision and an agenda for how to bring it about. And obviously that's what we want to develop with you. We don't want to just tell you, isn't everything crap all the time. You know that, I know that. What are we going to do about it?
C'est dégueulasse. passe, quoi. On se dit, à quoi ça sert d'avoir une Assemblée nationale?
What is the point of having a National Assembly if they ignore you? What's the point of having Congress if they ignore you and respond instead to the edicts suggested by the lobbying money and your own interests if you own stocks and shares? What's the point in voting in our parliament if they have a second job that pays them more money? Democracy in its current form isn't working anywhere. This kind of populist energy that people fear is exactly what's required. This transcends the cultural issues that have come to define our time, which are important for all of us. We should all learn how to accept that there's many, many ways to be human. Traditional, progressive, let's get on with that stuff, shall we? But this is what we really need for us to come together and confront centralised power. And as long as we're caught up in that quarrel, we're not going to be able to do this.
A recent poll by AFP finds a majority of the French support the protest movement against pension reform, and 59% support bringing the country to a standstill over it.
They're radical, aren't they, the French? 60% of them. Let's bring it to a standstill.
But as his country descended deeper into chaos, Emmanuel Macron stepped out in Belgium for an EU conference with a wink.
Hey, we are corrupt. We're ignoring democratic procedure. But the idea that Macron is out of touch is unfair and untrue. He knows exactly what time it is.
Et les blocages, il faut pouvoir les lever quand ils empêchent l'activité normale. De négocier et ensuite de réquisitionner.
It's been reported that Macron, in that interview, took off his ridiculous, Larry, sexy gold watch because he was sort of saying, Mom, we've all got to work together for a fairer France. Oh, shit, I'm rich. Vive la France! So, let's explain the basics of this story, the pension reform bill, why it was bypassed, and what this story tells us, not only about France, but about the whole world. This popular uprising that we're currently experiencing, and what we're going to have to do about it together if we're going to do anything other than make minor changes that won't make any bloody difference. The pension reform itself is deeply unpopular, opposed by 70 to 80% of the French public. But the manner in which the new law was passed, invoking the 49th article of the French Constitution, allowing the Prime Minister to bypass the National Assembly to force through the reforms without a vote, sparked real anger. That Parliament was not consulted is widely perceived as an anti-democratic affront. Ignoring Parliament is anti-democratic. Having politicians that don't represent people is anti-democratic. The world is not democratic. While the scale and intensity of the protests have made media headlines worldwide, the government response has attracted the attention of human rights organisations. Amnesty France has condemned the use of violent and repressive policing tactics. It has highlighted frequent use of dangerous crowd control methods such as kettling, which is illegal in France. Human rights organisations have also condemned the excessive use of tear gas and hundreds of arbitrary arrests. It seems like the usual tale that we're becoming familiar with. Something undemocratic takes place, people protest, the protest is treated like that's the problem. Shut them down, kettle them, spray them with gas, rather than, why are these people doing this? Is there any legitimacy to this movement? Any protest, I think, should be assessed in that way. Any, even the ones you don't agree with. People aren't really motivated, I don't think, by abstract ideological things. I think people are motivated by, hold on a minute, this is my life, I can't live my actual proper life now, as in this instance. Is it me? Or does the future feel more insecure and uncertain? Wars, pandemics, lies, trickery. My cats keep having kittens. The last one's personal. For those who are in the United States, there is a way to secure your hard-earned nest egg. American Hartford Gold make it easy to protect your savings and retirement accounts with physical gold and silver. With one phone call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door, or inside a qualifying retirement account like your IRA or 401k. American Hartford Gold is the highest rated firm in the US with an A+ rating from the BBB and thousands of satisfied clients. Right now, they will give you up to $5,000 of free silver on your first qualifying order. This offer is only for US customers. Call 866-505-8315. That's 866-505-8315, or simply text BRAND to 998899. Get up to $5,000 of silver and protect your future in this crazy, crazy world with some solid precious metals literally made in stars. This is an article by Charles Devillon, French, you know, senior lecturer in political and social thought at the University of Kent in England. The shift towards security is perhaps the most striking aspect of Macronism. Aren't you noticing that worldwide, sort of handsome or good-looking people are stepping to the forefront to tell you how liberal they are, and then surveilling you and taking away your right to protest? Justin Trudeau, the world's gentlest, loveliest, sort of barroom crooner, can't wait to evoke emergency acts. Rishi Sunak, that lovely little haircut of a man, can't wait to bring in tough new protest laws. Everything has become about appearance. And the problem with that sort of symptomatic approach, whether it's the aesthetics of power or the way of treating protest and dissent as a symptom rather than an indication of a deeper problem, means that we're not ever getting any closer to a solution. In fact, we're exacerbating the problem. Oh, here's something that looks like it would be a solution. A guy saying that he's nice and progressive. Yeah, well, none of us are having our lives improved, so we're going to continue to ultimately protest. Then more laws get passed. When a fundamental, integral and essential solution is required, we're continuing to present panaceas, distractions, illusions, optical solutions that don't actually change things for us. He has replaced liberty with security and made this the cornerstone of his regime. Even before COVID-19 reached Western countries and governments responded with lockdowns and curfews, Macron had securitized the French state against internal threats. Inheriting a state of emergency imposed by his predecessor, François Hollande, after the 2015 Paris attacks, Macron passed many emergency powers into ordinary law, effectively making the state of emergency permanent. Again and again, we are seeing the utilization of emergency measures to implement control and regulation, because it is now difficult and unnecessary to impose centralized control on a population that could be largely self-governing using technology available right now. People could have regionalized assembly, regionalized government, more and more democracy, more and more ability to regulate and control your own life, lower taxation, more bespoke and localized taxation when it is necessary. This has to be resisted because it prevents opportunity for profit. If you can centralize taxation, you can do deals with corporations, filter in that public money into private hands, you cream money off the top, you leave your short period of time as a public servant and get yourself back into the corporate world, which is where you're always heading. And that's why your Tony Blairs, your Clintons, your Obamas, all them people, they're double rich now because they're all working for big corporations. You can check that for yourself. That's how it works. You know that already. Those powers meant to curb the threat of terrorism were then used against the Gilets jaunes, a social movement with a broad popular base and appeal. Here are some new laws that will stop terrorists in their tracks. Who are these terrorists? I don't know, people with a different religion. Are they us? They are you, yes. Macron reinforced this security regime during COVID, giving prefects, state-appointed regional or departmental representatives, extraordinary powers, including the power to ban individuals from entire regions. Can I go into this region? No! The rise of the security state has been a constant feature of Macron's rule and has been reflected in the growth of the police budget. Oh, what a coincidence. They're militarising the state. They're preparing for civil unrest. And instead of asking people, have you turned into a racist lunatic overnight? Or is it that you're unhappy because your country's corrupt? This has led to more officers on the streets, an increasing riot police units, and the militarisation of their equipment. Have you seen that anywhere else, like America? Have you seen COVID budgets reappropriated by the police and used to militarise your police force? You have, because that's what's happened. This in turn has prompted an increase in police violence. Dozens of people lost an arm or an eye in confrontations with the police. On the night of Macron's re-election, a police officer opened fire with an automatic weapon on a car in central Paris, killing 2 of its occupants on the spot. But also, well done on the re-election. The process of securitization is a core feature of neoliberalism. Unlike liberalism, its 19th century parent, neoliberalism is not concerned with reducing the size and reach of the state. On the contrary, neoliberals fully embrace the state in order to use its powers to regulate and create the conditions for markets and a modern capitalist economy more broadly. Where old school liberals believe markets are natural, neoliberals know that the conditions for the market to exist depend largely on strong enforcement by the state. Regulatory bodies, anti-union laws, more flexible work contracts, a strong justice system, and a repressive police force are all essential to enforce the needs of the market and fashion a labour force at the mercy of employers. Initially, the idea, I'm not saying the reality, the idea was that the state aggregates collective power in order to create justice and fairness. Plainly, clearly, observably, if this was ever true, and I'm not saying it was, what happens now is that state power, as the author describes, is used to create the right conditions, essentially, for elites to prosper. When markets fail, who bails them out? Whether that's 2008 or, the other day. When people rise up, how are the police force going to control them? Who is going to ensure that the media, for example, stay on track with their messaging rather than telling the truth to ordinary people who might find the information startling, provocative, and cause for uprising? Macron's embrace of neoliberalism forms part of his appeal to to the socially liberal but economically conservative sections of the electorate. It is made clear in his philosophy of en même temps, at the same time, a phrase he uses a lot. He is at the same time left and right. He is at the same time promoting security and liberty. He is at the same time socially liberal and economically conservative. And he is at the same time hiding his watch and being a bit of a prick. This ambiguity has allowed him to capture the bourgeois bloc, a large electoral group consisting of socially liberal, highly educated metropolitan voters which up until the 2017 election had tended to support the left. He has been the president of the very rich, abolishing the iconic impôt de solidarité sur la fortune, a solidarity tax on wealth, and introducing a flat tax on dividends, two measures that favour the top 1 to 2% of earners. So he is a president of elites. There are some particularities in French politics and obviously in the language, and I'm doing my best, but ultimately he's a recognisable political type that has emerged, in the post-Blair, Clinton era. Talk all nice, oh yeah, you can be gay, you can be whatever you want to be, we're having your money, we're going to control you, don't be poor. Whatever it is you are, whatever colour you are, whoever it is you have sex with and whoever it is you think you are and want to be, don't be poor or you're fucked. Macron is also the president of meritocracy par excellence. Michael Sandel, the American political theorist, has provided a strong critique of the ideology that underpins meritocracy. This is credentialism, the elevation of formal educational credentials over other ways of understanding people's abilities and potential. This is the rise of the expert, of aristocracy, of do as you're told, paternalism, which we're seeing across the world. This, as Sandel puts it, is the last accepted prejudice shared by the ruling elites throughout the Western world. It is the belief that one person is better than another based on his or her level of educational attainment, a view which often serves as justification for the status, wealth and power of the existing elites. They've found a way of legitimising and justifying hatred of ordinary French people or American people, British people, it doesn't matter, Sri Lankan people, it's irrelevant. They've found a way of saying, look, we're experts, we've been educated. How come you've been so educated? Oh, well, because of the class we were born into, the institutions we had access to. But that cannot continue when people have access to information and education in the ways that we do now, and the ability to create counter-narratives and protest movements. So you have to up surveillance, you have to create categorizations of misinformation and disinformation in order to shut down dissent, and you have to increase the government's ability to regulate and control. Otherwise, there are going to be enormous disruptions. We're seeing it across the world. Whether you like it or not, Brexit and Trump were part of that. The Gilets Jaunes were part of that. These protests are part of it. BLM's part of it. It doesn't matter what they're talking about, whether it appears to be associated with one cultural group or another cultural group. Ultimately, what people are saying is, we want more power. We want more direct access to power. We want to regulate our own lives. We don't want to be dominated and controlled. That's why continually what we're talking about on this channel is whether you personally are willing to go, oh God, yeah, I do have some prejudices. It's against X, Y, Z. And then go, but in order to change the world, I'm going to sort of open my mind and my heart to the possibility that I could be wrong about that. You might not like the traditional way of life or the progressive way of life. It's sort of irrelevant, actually. Just whatever it is, be willing to go, okay, we'll sort that out later. For now, can we create better systems, which will only happen through, I reckon, this kind of activism and then a cohesive response afterwards. The system is so adept at breaking this stuff down, criminalising people. Oh, it's only a small violent minority, blah, blah, blah. They'll find a way of shutting this down, believe you me. Or even bringing in another party that goes, we've dealt with all of that. We're going to reverse that bill. We've obviously went too far with that. Sorry. Then they'll find another way of stealing your money that's less obvious. Of course they will. That's how it works. We have to maintain our intention and our focus and accept nothing less than systemic change. That will mean things like politicians aren't allowed a second job. Politicians aren't allowed to own stocks and shares. Political parties aren't allowed to be funded by corporations. There can be no money in politics. Once you start doing stuff like that, you will feel the quaking. You will feel it. The tectonic plates will shift. It's like, hold on, if we can't do that, that would mean that pharma will be regulated differently. Energy will be regulated differently. Big tech will be regulated differently because people would vote for stuff that would improve their lives. As they say, the turkeys would not vote for Christmas. We're the turkeys, and it's Christmas every day for these lunatics. As a graduate of the most elite school in France, l'École Nationale d'Administration, the ENA, that's produced hundreds of politicians and CEOs of French companies, Macron is well placed to defend the elites over the people. By coincidence, he went to school with all the elites. So when he's making decisions and he looks at the faces of his pals from school, and then the stinking French yellow vest protesters, which way do you think he goes? French higher education is notoriously meritocratic in this credentialist sense, with concours, which are competitive exams, regulating entrance to its various grand écoles. Of course, in practice, the ability to pay for expensive private preparatory schools ahead of these exams means the results often end up replicating and legitimising existing social structures. That's really obvious, isn't it? If you can afford to tutor your children well, unless they're them, you remember from your school, them weird little genius kids that don't fit in. I'm just going to do all of the work, little Martin Princes from The Simpsons or Lisa Simpsons. Unless it's them, they turn into little dickheads anyway, don't they? Let's face it. Then we're all finished. Those educated outside these elite schools are the ones who have seen their material conditions deteriorate over recent decades, effectively turning a vast proportion of the population into the losers of globalization. This is where the story of what's happening in France meets with the story of what's happening everywhere. They've gone too far. The problem has become too pronounced. The wealth transfer of the pandemic merely provided a momentary photograph, a kind of cross-section of what's been happening for years and years. Wait a minute, in this unique crisis, these organisations and institutions really benefited, and all of these institutions and individuals were annihilated by it. Small businesses, education standards for your kids, even health in loads and loads of cases, which was meant to be the bloody priority. This story in France, if you look at it correctly, it will tell you the story of the world. Democracy isn't working properly, perhaps it never has. Macron is also the president of hope. Oh God, not this crap again. Whenever you hear hope, you know that what's behind it is someone who's about to give a load of money to banks and really lie to you. And not in a good way. Against the background of the financial crisis of 2008 and the terrorist attacks of 2015, COVID and the war in Ukraine, hope can be a powerful palliative emotion. Neoliberals essentially have to appeal to a sense of hope. Given the past failures of capitalism, backing their program requires a leap of faith. There's always hope that the market can be better organised, that with a bit of tinkering and red tape cutting, the business leader can show the rest of us the way. The problem with appealing to hope is that if it is not met, it leads to disappointment and disillusionment. The Gilets Jaunes have certainly stopped hoping for Macron to help them out. Barack Obama, the other politician of hope, gave way to Trump after serving 2 presidential terms. Disappointed by Obama's near-decade-long invocation of hope, which was accompanied by no material improvement in their living conditions, many blue-collar workers turned to populist politics in the US in 2016. Yeah, if after nearly a decade of going, well, I really hope this is going to pay off. You've been doing this for ages. How long are we supposed to carry on with the hope? A bit longer, till I've left office and I've got my money. Now the hope's gone. Good luck with Donald Trump. Political appeals to hope, then, can often be detrimental in the long run. In many ways, hope is the great destroyer of solidarity and fraternity. The core values of the French Republic is a passive emotion, making people dependent on outside forces, whereas solidarity is an active emotion and mobilises those who take part. The pitiful state of the left in France is indicative of the state of solidarity-based politics. How can you have solidarity when everyone is divided? Solidarity is even a word that you associate with the old left, but solidarity must be revitalised and given a populist boost. It must be something that we recognise we can achieve among all of us and need to achieve in order to confront centralised establishment power. We need to recognise that we must come out in favour of trade union, come out in favour of identity politics, come out in favour of traditional lifestyles, come out in favour of individual and community freedom, especially with those we disagree with. That's the click we all have to make. Once we flip over to that mentality, we'll be unstoppable. Here is a president claiming to speak for the whole of France while governing in the interests of an elite. A president of a land of liberté who is securitizing the state. A president forever peddling hope while disappointment grows daily. So there you have it. What's happening in France might be particular, but it is by no means unique. It is another leader posing as the friend to everyone, claiming to represent the masses, while in fact he is yet another elitist, schooled alongside them with their interest in his heart, with his watch concealed so you can't see the gold emblem of his true alliances. The populist uprising that's happening right now in France should be happening everywhere, not because violence and burning stuff is the answer, but recognizing that we have more in common with one another in spite of apparent cultural, racial, identity differences than we could ever have with the elites that benefit from this ongoing social disruption between us. The message of France is a simple one. Come together, unite, protest, demand systemic change. Do not accept some piecemeal minor exchange for another political party that's basically the same, because the same thing will happen. You will not get different results from doing the same thing again and again. Any drug addict knows that. But That's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments in the chat. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. Remember, turn on the notification bell and subscribe to this channel right now. We make content every single day and the algorithm may guide it away from thine eyes. More important than any of that is that you please stay free.